Right, welcome to this next video about how to format long documents. We're going to start from the basics. In this particular video, I'm going to tell you about formatting and how you change the appearance of the text on your page. So in this video, we're going to look at two types of formatting. We're going to look at what is called font formatting or character formatting, if you want to use the technical term. And we're going to look at paragraph formatting. Now, in my empty document, you can see that I have a paragraph that I have copied from a website about, it's an arbitrary paragraph, it doesn't matter. But what it is it's actually, as you'll see later when we add some more text to this document, a funny little throwback to the typesetting industry of the printing press, where there was a standard text that printers used to test the setup of their press and the way that they laid out their text to make sure everything was working okay. And that text is called lorem ipsum. So you can see it's simply a dummy text of the printing and typesetting industry, and it has been that dummy text for 500 years. It's made the leap into electronic typesetting too. All right, so I'll be generating lorem ipsum texts for us to play with. They don't particularly mean anything. The focus is on the appearance of the text, not the content of it. All right, let's get stuck into what you can see on your screen. I am going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see clearly what is going on. I have a paragraph, very simple, straight up piece of text with nothing fancy on it. There's a few things to straight away notice. Firstly, this paragraph is left aligned, which means that all of the text is budged up against the left-hand side, but the right edge is jagged. And you can see that that is something that is in my paragraph formatting, which shows, how to prioritize the way to line up the lines on the page. Another thing you might notice is that the text is black. You might notice that it's a very simple type of letter. It hasn't got little tails and little curls. In fact, we would call this a sans serif font. It is a font that lacks serifs. Serifs are those little curly tails involved in text. Calibri is the name of this text. And if I was to pick a serifed font, the most common one is Times New Roman. You can see that this type of a letter has got sort of little curls on it. Look at the little P there. You see it's got like little tips coming off the P, little tips coming off the G, sort of nice little curly tails and frilly bits on the edges of the letters in ways that the sans serif font doesn't have. Okay, there's, different opinions about whether one should use serifed or sans serifed fonts. I find sans serifed fonts without the little tidbits cleaner to read. I prefer it myself, but you'll see that a lot of standard books, documents, reports, they use Times New Roman. Some reading experts have claimed that serifed fonts are easier to read because apparently those little hooks and tails lead the eye from one letter to the next. I have, I'm not going to tell you which way either to go. It is mostly an aesthetic preference. I'm going to be using primarily sans serif fonts in these videos because that's what I like and I get to. It's my video. Excuse the sound of puppy in the background. Okay, so first things first, let's have a look at some of the font properties here. We have, as I said, what we call the font face, or the kinds of letters being used to write the text. We also have a size. Anywhere between 10 and 11 is the industry norm. 12 is a large but acceptable. And anything from 14 onwards is normally considered a heading style size. And anything at 8 or 9, well, it's teeny tiny text that, people would need glasses to read. The sort of thing you would use to create a medicine insert or something like that. We will also notice that our text is black. These are all font properties. They tell us how the individual letters and words appear. Now I'm going to grab hold of two of these words, and we're going to add some of the qualities. For example, we can add what we call font qualities. You can make them bold. You can make them italic. You can underline them. And you can make combinations of these. Nothing new. What you do need to notice is that these are font properties. And that's going to matter later when you need to know how to set up a font or character style as opposed to a paragraph style. And you're wanting to say, okay, how do I layer different preset looks and feels on top of each other? Because I want a little bit of a text in a paragraph to be bold, or perhaps not bold. And I want the rest of the paragraph to look a different way. Other things that are added to fonts include making it subscript, so smaller and below the writing line. Perhaps making it superscript. You would use that, for example, for numerical values where you say second or third. Sometimes it does it by default. A lot of footnotes tend to be superscript. Some maths stuff can also be superscript, like powers and exponents. Something you'll very rarely use in academic writing is called text effects. So you can do all sorts of funky, pretty things like adding outlines, shadows, reflections, and glows. Ligatures, which is where you can make the texts stick together. Historical and discretionary, for example. If you've ever seen old-fashioned ways of writing, say, the word encyclopedia, where the A and the E in the word kind of are blended together, that sort of thing is ligatures. We don't really use a lot of those these days. You might also apply a highlight effect over a piece of font. You might change its size, so you can make it bigger, or you can make it smaller. As I'm doing those increase, decrease buttons, I could change the same thing by just picking a number from the drop-down box. These are all options. I can change its case. For example, I wanted to say, keep this all lowercase. Well, nothing would change there. It was all lowercase already. But if I was to do it here where I have a capital letter, you see I go lowercase, and all capital letters are replaced with lowercase ones. Very rarely, never really needed to use that. Uppercase, well, you'd use that if you have some kind of all caps. You can have capitalize each word. Also, never found ever need for that. But obviously, stick to the grammatical norms, which is to use a capital letter for a proper noun and uppercase for acronyms, etc. Clear all formatting is exceptionally useful. For example, if I grab hold of all the nonsense I've put here and I go strip it off, interesting that it does not delete the highlight, but basically it will pull all that overlay on off. So imagine, think of it like makeup cleaner, if you like. You can also change the color of the text, and there are not only preset colors, but you can also customize your colors to something really unusual. Why you would want to do that, I am not sure. That didn't apply. Do that again, please. Ah, there we go. Now it's applied. But for example, if you were doing a piece of research where you were doing a very close analysis of a linguistic corpus or a transcribed dialogue between multiple people, you might find it useful to portray, say, different speakers by creating their text or their utterances in different colors. Later, I'll show you how then you would have a style for each speaker and apply it to the paragraphs that match that person so that you don't have to go and grab every line and go, well, that was Dumasani, and that was Sadiq, and that was Sarah speaking, and that was Jill. We'll look at that later. All right, so that's everything available on your font formatting ribbon section, but there is more, of course, because we can fire up that dialog and have a look. All right, on the font tab in the dialog, you'll mostly see a repetition of what we already could access: font color, underlining, bold, italic, size. But here you can also do things like give the underlining a style. Again, useful for people like social linguists who want to be able to say underline words in a different language in a noticeable way, maybe with ziggy-zaggy or a double underline. Additional things that you can use here are strike through and double strike through, small caps, or hidden. I've sometimes created a style, a font style with hidden, because I want to have bits of text that I then can quickly hide from the main text. I'll show you that when we start to look at using styles to format paragraphs and sections of paragraphs. And below at the bottom, you can see an example of what font would look like with the things you've chosen. So for example, if I said, oh, I want to do something that looks really cool, I'm going to choose a weird, let's find something very strange. Mistral. Ah, that looks sufficiently strange. I'm going to make it really big. Let's just see if we can, this dialog, unfortunately, is not expandable. You're not limited to the numbers presented here, by the way. You can actually manually enter numbers as well. Oh, that's interesting. I've just managed to crash the system. But there you go, 144. At least crash the dialog. Let's go back to 72. I'm going to give it a dotty underline, make it bold. Nope, that doesn't, I want to make it, nope. Okay, we'll keep it there. And I'm going to make it bright red. Strike through, all caps. And I didn't select any font, so it's not actually applied there. But I could definitely do that. I'll grab some text and I'll go strike through. What was that? Mistral or something equally strangely named? Let's find that weird font again. There it is. We made it very large. We made it red. We made it strangely underlined. And now it's going to apply that to the text I had selected. So there's something very important to note, is that if you are going to apply font formatting to a piece of text or some characters, you actually have to select them. You actually have to select them and apply it. That'll be the case for styles as well. All right, I'm going to erase that monstrosity. Thank you very much. Get rid of that. But there were other things on there as well. There was advanced. And I'm just including this for interest's sake, but this is where you can start to really tweak aspects about how the computer draws those characters on the page. So you can make it condensed or expanded or normal. For example, if we go expanded by 1 point, I'm going to, let's make it expanded by 5 points. Look at how it spreads the text out. Now, these are not spaces. If I take my cursor and I press left or right, I haven't added spaces in between. I've literally told the computer to spread the letters apart. That's quite an important idea as well, which comes on to something that we will completely depend on throughout all these videos, and I'll keep repeating this in most of them. I'm going to erase that monstrosity as well. In order to see exactly what the computer is doing in terms of the layout on your screen, you need to be able to see not just what it is drawing, but also what it's not drawing. And that is where this little button becomes extraordinarily important. It's called a tilde. and it will show or hide formatting symbols. When I click it, all of a sudden, all these extra little bits and bobs crop up on my screen. And you can see that every space is being shown with a dot, and every carriage return, or what we call pressing enter, is signaled with a tilde. In formatting speak, this is a space or a blank space bar signal, and what we want is we want only one between each word in order for the kerning or the spacing of the text and the space between words to be correct. This symbol signals the end of a paragraph. And a couple of the things I see people do, which are either hang-ups from old typewriters or naive use of word processors because they don't know how to use styles and formatting, is they will do things like, okay, I want space between my paragraphs. I'm going to add enter, 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 enter. It's not a good idea to do this, because anytime you go, oh, that's actually, I've decided I want less space between my paragraphs, you have to go back between every single paragraph and delete every single one of those carriage returns manually. We don't want that. We want to be able to change them all at once. Equally, forgive the dog in the background. And also what you'll see is that people who are used to old typewriters will often put a double space at the start of a new sentence. For example, here, where it says it was popularized in the 1960s, people will put a double space at the start of that sentence. Now, the kickback to typewriters is that this was a way of ensuring adequate spacing to signal to the eye a new sentence was beginning. But computers don't need that, because automatic kerning is what we do to spread the letters out in a way that reads nicely to the eye, ensures that the space there is going to be adequate. So I'll often find students doing that, but actually you really don't need to do that. Okay, so revealing the formatting, where are the carriage returns to signal a new paragraph? Where are the spaces? If we need to push something a little bit further into the middle of the page, we do this using, depending on if it's, you can see if I put it at the beginning of the paragraph there, it starts to tack it on to the end of the previous line. We don't do that using the space bar. We do it using things like paragraph formatting to say hanging indent, or should I say first line indent, hanging indent, or total indent, or if we need to distribute different bits of the paragraph at particular points vertically along the page, then we will use something called tabs. Left tabs, centered tabs, right tabs, decimal tabs. And we will start to look at those later in paragraph formatting. For now, that is font formatting. What you are doing is you are changing the appearance of individual characters or letters. That is the unit you are working with, and that is the level at which font formatting applies. In the next video, I'm going to show you more about paragraph formatting. We'll see you then.